Namaskar and welcome to ITV Gold. I am Pia Jyoti Khatru and today we have the second session of CWC, Crack the Wellness Code, as part of the Healthy You series of AAPI focusing on heart health, diabetes, and obesity. All these three ailments pose the biggest health hazard for South Asians and the Indian community. So we are indeed fortunate to have four accomplished physicians to tell us how to apply lifestyle medicines to these health challenges to live a healthy and happy life. And all four are CWC doctor patrons who helped in seeding the wellness movement in San Francisco Bay Area that is going global. Right here, I have with me Dr. Sam Suri, MD, MBA, FACC, associated with West Coast Medicine and Cardiology in Fremont, California, attending Washington Hospital, Fremont, California, networks with UCSF Medical Center and Stanford Medical Center. Next, I have with me Dr. Srinivas Ramachandra, MD and vascular surgeon, engaged with multiple clinics in San Francisco Bay Area with 48 years of medical experience, helping needy patients worldwide with volunteer time for surgery and cure. And next, I have Dr. Soham Patel, MD, endocrinologist and lifestyle medicine specialist, member, American College of Endocrinology and Lifestyle Medicine. And I also have Dr. Naris Bhatt, board certified specialist in internal medicine, obesity medicine, sleep medicine, metabolic cardiology, allergy and immunology, and biofeedback. Practices integrative medicine at his own 7 multi-specialty clinics. He's an author, professor, and one of the founders of South Asian Heart Center. So let me welcome doctors Sam, Ramachandra, Soham, and Naris. It's a pleasure to have you on ITV Gold. Dr. Naris, you have focused a lot on obesity and, run several programs. And with obesity often being the root cause of heart disease and diabetes. So tell us about the programs you run for the community.
Well, basically, when we approach obesity with the same three questions, what is it? And then why, you should improve your weight gain and in fact to focus on weight loss. And then finally, how you do it. So weight gain and fat, we differentiate. We focus on three issues regarding fat. One is ectopic fat, like Dr. Soham Patel mentioned. That is, you deposit fat in around your belly in ectopic location, which is by far the most common in South Asians, people of Indian origin. And that fat is more toxic because that produces inflammation. And the second thing, very important to know, is brown fat versus white fat. People with the brown skin, like people from India, for example, have lot of white fat, and white people, like a Caucasian race, have brown fat. So you want to really brown your white fat or beige your white fat, and that is possible by reducing the temperature of your house in winter, physical activity, and then eating plant-slanted, microbial-focused food, and then, of course, sleep and stress management and so forth. And then we teach them how to reduce your exposure to insulin level in your blood. And there are two factors in reducing your exposure to high insulin. One is what you eat, the other is the physical activity. What you eat is you want to really not give your body processed, ultra processed food that we are so much used to in the Western lifestyle, and then you want to replace it with whole grains. And additionally, if you can't, then you can use a resistant starch like a potato starch, green banana flour, and chicory, inulin, and so forth. Furthermore, what we teach them is, your body is like a hybrid car. A hybrid car runs on gasoline and is on a battery as a backup. And the glucose is used very quickly as a gasoline, and then the fat is slowly burnt like the battery, and you have only 2000 calorie worth of glucose stored as glycogen in your body, where you have perhaps 100,000 calorie of fat in your body, and you want to use and tap that fat, and by two processes. So physical activity is more important as well. Physical activity, there is a fallacy. People think physical activity is going to gym for 1 hour a day. I go to gym, still I don't lose weight. Why? Because 1 hour of gym is 1 hour out of 24 hours, which is 4% of your entire day. The rest of the time you are couch potato, and that is why we teach them how to do NEAT, non-exercise activity thermogenesis, which is not exercise but every other activity that you do, specifically reducing your sitting time. And that is one. And finally, we have some, like we are doing a Zoom conference here. I have a lot of patients who are in the computer cubicle, and I teach them, believe it or not, very simple 20-20 rule. While you can stay away from the screen for 20 seconds, and then you jog in place as fast as you can for 20 seconds. We have shown, you can prove it yourself by using continuous glucose monitoring, that it reduces your glucose level and also your insulin level, and this is called HIIT, high intensity interval to exercise or a training. And in short, finally, as a concluding remark, from lifestyle medicine, we refine it to next level, which is called the personalized lifestyle medicine. And we personalize lifestyle medicine for our patients by doing stool analysis and looking at their gut bacterial balance. Specifically, that is, we look at the diversity, Akkermansia level, which is the protective gut biome, and then F by B. F is a fat, remember, easy to remember. More of firmicutes and less, and is more fat gain, and more of bacteria, bacteroides, you are better and losing the fat. And then, so my signature message at the end is, feed a trillion and then eat your meal. Feed a trillion of gut bacteria, then you are philanthropically eating your own meal, and you shared it in half of the plate with your gut bacteria.
So, my next question is all four of you, Dr. Sam, Dr. Ram, Dr. Soham, and of course, Dr. Anaras. With increasing focus on lifestyle medicine and integrative medicine, what is that, our audience should know about some basics that often tend to get ignored, such as dietary practices, exercises, sleep, and mental wellness? Any quick tips or practices, lessons to get started?
Well, the panelists have done a very good job of listing everything that people should be doing. I'm just going to add one as a non-primary care person. The important thing for most people is to educate themselves. It's very important. Again, I'm putting in a plug for CWC here. It's important for them to, first of all, understand what it's all about. It brings us back, at least for my generation, that everything your grandma said many years ago is true. We thought it was heresy when we were in medical school, when grandmother came up with all of her suggestions. And 50 years later, we're finding out everything is true now. And there is scientific data to prove that. So I think knowledge is the key. Trying to understand how all these things work is real. And we're blessed to have such eminent panelists who will share this information with all of the listening audience or on Zoom. So I think knowledge is the key, and then persistence is the key. I think reinforcing this message over and over and make sure that people do make changes in their lifestyle. So at some point in time, hopefully, will be able to measure outcomes to see if their interventions have translated into significant improvement in their health.
Well said, Ram and Naresh and Dr. Sonam. I really do appreciate all your input, because I thought that there was a lot of learning that I had to do myself in this whole process. But it's nice to interact because everybody has a slightly different approach. I think one of the things we have to sit back and think about is, if you go back 100 years or maybe a little bit more, the lifestyle, as Dr. Ram had said, lifestyles were different. People were walking more. There was no traffic jams. There was no cars, for that matter, or there were a few cars that were coming up about 100 years ago. And there was, no railroads. There was just a lot of things that weren't there, or if they were there, they were very primitive. And people did have a nice long lifespan and less headaches to deal with on a daily basis. However, I have to kind of say, on the flip side of things, if you really look at lifelines and you look at life expectancy has, in this current era today, in 2022 and beyond, has improved. And it's now the average US lifespan for men, and I could be corrected, is close to around 80 years or 82 years. And for women is another 8 years. So that's where you have a lot of, widows. But that being said, 80 and 88 wasn't the fact if you trail back about 100 years ago in the US. And the same thing is extrapolated to India and any other country. It was 20 years less. So obviously, we have become more aware of certain things that does include not only new era medications and new technology, all that helps. But I think lifestyle and lifestyle change for the entire population has made this happen as well. And I think you combine your basic allopathic strategy with a much broader lifestyle change, walking out, you see Californians in much better health than their counterparts in the Midwest, for example. That's a typical example. Their lifespans are a little bit more complicated and shorter, perhaps, in the Midwest as they are in California. So these things you have to take into account, healthy living, outdoor living, a lot of it with, exercise, diet, a combination of things that's changed a lot. So just look at the big, broad thing where we've come along. We've come a long ways. That's all I had to say. Thank you.
Yeah, so I will mention two things that I would, suggest as takeaway. Number one is understanding, all the, the aspects of lifestyle medicine as we, talked about so far. But it is not about perfection. It's about progress. Because you could easily get overwhelmed and get lost and either not do anything, or things just keep tumbling on and you don't get any benefit. So yes, you are educating yourself, but you don't need to make all the changes at the same time. Start with food and then keep going further. Work on your sleep, work on your activity, work on your stress management, and that's how you complete the circle. So you want to take the overwhelm away from your approach, because if you get overwhelmed, then, and when we get that, we either stop or we go slide away. So we don't want that. So key is to understand, how we react to things and make sure we don't trip into those ways. And there are a few people who are, either all in or all out. So for them, it's fine to just go 100% in because that's how they function. But majority of people don't function that way. So you want to start with somewhere and then work your way through. And that's how you'll be able to sustainably keep doing this, get the benefits, and not go back and forth. Because worse than doing this is yo-yo patterns. When you go up and down, you actually create more adverse health outcomes. So sustained progress, it would be a bumpy ride, but a ride that keeps going up. That's the point.
Absolutely.
And secondly, you want to understand why you're doing it. That's the glue that gathers all these aspects of lifestyle medicine together. Why? There should be a big why. And the stronger and the more specific that your why is, the more likely you have that perennial flow of motivation that can keep refilling your willpower, that keeps guiding you every day. So take a few minutes, maybe a day, to drill down what's your why for making these changes. Because you could know everything, you may make some changes, but if you don't have that why, at some point you will go off from what you're trying to do. So recognizing that you don't have to do all things in a single day. And number two, finding your why will make it more sustainable and a permanent solution to your better health.
Any other final comments by each of you, or any advice do you have for our audience?
It's more of guidance towards the new courses that CWC is working on creating. I'm part of the course that we're creating on type 2 diabetes, but there are many different courses being created. So like we talked about, the first step is to educate yourself. So make sure you are plugging in to get the information, and there are lots of different disease related courses coming in the next year from CWC.
I would second that. I would state further that, from an audience perspective, there is a lot of information available on the internet. If you go on Google, again, I'm not picking on Google. If you go on Google and put any entity, you get lots of information. The problem is, how do you process this information? How do you make any sense of it? And how do you not apply everything literally? This is where I think experts like my fellow panelists come in. And this is where participating in some of the activities of entities such as CWC comes into being. And this is where I think you get credible information, curated information, and you have the opportunity to ask questions and get these things clarified. So I would actually encourage people to participate in the activities of CWC.
I have a couple of things that I'd like to talk about, and perhaps I'm not. Am I able to talk about this right now?
Absolutely. Go ahead.
Okay, so I think we did. We tried to cover a lot of things related to cardiac health, but I mean, obviously the goal is to. Cardiac health is very broad in my mind and in our minds. And I think that we've alluded to, and the panelists have talked about several lifestyle changes to make to prevent, serious cardiac disease. And that's very welcoming and thoughtful and very useful. But there are some established sort of diseases that sort of have already occurred. For example, somebody's had a prior heart attack, which is called a myocardial infarction. For those on the, of course, everybody on the panel knows that, but beyond the panel, for the common knowledge of people. So there's something called cardiac rehabilitation, and I think they have designed protocols for it, which we can discuss at another sort of meeting. But I think more importantly, the cardiac rehab comes into play, and walking and accelerated walking, escalated protocols for treatment of patients who have suffered from heart attacks is a big has been a big challenge thus far. But there are several protocols that are now established that we can perhaps sort of detail in the future. Similarly, for congestive heart failure, it's a very common problem across the globe. And I think that that needs to be addressed from a lifestyle management. And I think enough work is still to be done, hasn't been done, and still needs to be done. And awareness has to be brought to the public about both these type of conditions, because people who've had these heart ailments sort of don't have answers. And I think that there are certain design protocols that could help people. So I think we can discuss this on another take at some point, but I think these are important areas to sort of talk about. The one question that I might have for some of my panelists, and again, it doesn't relate to lifestyle per se, but it's relating to certain types of neuro agents that help reduce second heart attacks and also reduce rehospitalizations. And I think Dr. Som can answer this a little bit better, is the use of SGL2 inhibitors. And I think I'd like to kind of bring that to the panel for further discussion on our next meeting, but I think it's a great discussion for a cardiometabolic meeting. So if you want to talk about it right now, that's fine. If not, we can discuss this off-label another time.
I'll quickly, it's obviously a pretty big topic, but I'll give a, quick answer there. So yes, the heart and the kidneys and metabolic health, everything is connected. And SGLT2 inhibitors, so sodium glucose transporter inhibitors, are these channels that are in the kidneys that are supposed to reabsorb sodium and glucose back in the bloodstream. And by preventing that from happening with this SGLT2 inhibitor class of medications, those are oral medications, we can increase the loss of sodium and glucose through the urine. So it helps lower blood pressure, it helps lower sugars, and it helps cardiac health because of the improving sugars and blood pressure. So it definitely has a cardiac benefit. And because it improves blood sugars and blood pressure, it also helps the kidneys. So it plays a very significant role in impacting multiple areas. It also does come with a few sets of side effects because you're peeing a very sugar-rich urine. Commonly, I find patients getting genital yeast infections. Women get that more than men because of the change in the difference in the anatomy, and also dehydration if they don't maintain enough hydration and adjust their other medications as their blood pressure improves. But for as a part of a comprehensive treatment, if someone is having issues with congestive heart failure, CHF as we call it, adding a SGLT2 inhibitor can hit multiple targets, the kidneys, the heart, and the sugars with the blood pressure to make a more impact while they're working on the changes. So I usually use them as a tool to kind of bridge them while they're making the lifestyle changes. And as they do better, I can get them off of them, but it definitely plays a pretty big impact.
Thank you. And I definitely had a great time, hearing and talking to all of you. And yes, you have, taken your time out amid this busy schedule. So once again, thank you so much. And for today, I would say here are some of the points for all of us. And last CWC episode highlighted the wellness movement of crack your own wellness code, whereby the code of your good health lies in your lifestyle and related best practices. Now it's time to start practicing these lifestyle changes suggested by our eminent panelists. And as we earlier, said that CWC has health tracks focusing on heart health, diabetes, and obesity. And a new community impact course on diabetes is being launched by August 2022. So do join CWC events, find content, and watch videos to crack your own wellness code. And once again, I'd like to remind you that join CWC Wellness Movement, download CWC Kushi app from Apple or Android, or sign up for free membership today. And to know more about CWC, email to info@mycwc.com. Thank you so much, all of you.